Hi, I'm Pastor Bill with your Maple Minute for Thursday, July the 16th, 2020. You know, every day of our life we're writing a story or leaving a legacy, however you want to look at it, and our story is developed by the choices that we make, by the people that we know in our life and have in our life, and by the obstacles that we overcome. In the next couple of Maple Minutes, I want to talk about those three areas, and I'm going to start today with talking about our friends. You know, that's something we've been talking about so much during this last couple of Maple Minutes as we talked about guys like Jonathan and David and Saul. But the truth of the matter is, each day we're writing a story about our lives, and the people in our lives help shape our lives. And so that principle is so important. We often talk about it as parents when we're dealing with our students and who they hang out with and what they do, but it's true in our lives too. You know, part of this statement I want to make is the people you know determine the story you tell. And that is so true. It's the people in your life, the people that you know, determine the story you tell. And I would go as far to say is it's important that you know who's in your life and who you allow to be in your life. The people you know, and I'm not just talking about things like you know of somebody, I'm talking about the people that are in your life, determine the story you tell. But they don't just determine the story you tell, they also the people you're hanging out with today are shaping the person you'll become tomorrow. And that is so important. That's a lesson that we as parents, we try and teach our teenagers, we try and teach our young students, but we need to pay attention to that ourselves. The people you hang out with today are shaping the person you'll become tomorrow. And that's not just something that I think, that's a biblical premise. In fact, over in the book of Proverbs, chapter 13, verse 20, one of the most profound parenting verses, I think, or verses for our lives we could ever have, it says, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." In some of the other translation, it says that a companion of fools is destroyed. And that's the truth. We all know that when we hang with the wrong people, they make us the wrong kind of person. Yet sometimes we ignore this. I think that's such an important thing that I want to take just a minute to emphasize this by looking at the life of one of the guys that we've been talking about, a guy named David. See, I think everybody needs three types of friends to reach their God-given potential, and David had at least these three friends in his life that helped him. As we look about this, in Acts chapter 13, verse 22, the Bible says that giving a history, this is giving a history of David, really. It says, after removing Saul, he, that is God, made David their king. God testified concerning him, and this is what God said about David. He is, I have found the son of David, the son of Jesse, a man after my own heart. He will do everything I want him to do. That's the importance. A man after my own heart. David was a man after my own heart. And so when we look at this, I think there are three types of friends that everyone needs to reach their God-given potential that David had. And the first one is we all need a friend to challenge us or to challenge you to bring out your best. And in that, we would have to say his friend was a guy named Samuel. Now, Samuel could also be noted as a mentor. He was the guy that anointed David to become king. In fact, we turn over into the story in 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 12. Samuel is sent to David's house to anoint him as the next king, but his own dad didn't even think enough of him and think he was important enough to bring him out, because he had sons that were better looking, that were stronger, that looked better, more like leaders. But God was looking in the heart. And so we pick up the story in verse 12. It says, so he sent, and that is Samuel, sent for David and had him brought in. That actually he had Jesse send for David. He was glowing with health and had a fine appearance and handsome features. Then the Lord said, rise and anoint him. This is the one. You know, it's obvious that Samuel in this connection right here made a good connection with David. David wanted to be that man that had a heart for God, and God had picked him. Now, the people had picked Saul before because he was just the head and shoulders king, but Saul had no heart for God. When God started doing the picking, he looked into the hearts of people. He passed by the older brothers of David because they didn't have what was right. But he told Samuel, anoint David. And David and Samuel became friends, or really in a mentor relationship. Samuel mentored David in leadership as he would move into the role of king. That's an awesome thing, the influence there. But the reality of it is we have a guy that challenges David to become a better person, to bring out his best. Do you have someone in your life that challenges you? Not accept, I think in today's world, we always look for people who just accept us. And that's fine, but in reality, that doesn't help us become the best version that we could be of ourselves. We need people who will challenge us. Samuel was a stern man of God who challenged David to not go after the ways that Saul did, to stand up to wrong and to do what is right. And so because of this, David moves on to become the young man who challenges Goliath and defeats him. I think the second friend we have to look at, as we look at three types of people that everyone needs as friends to reach their God-given potential, is we need a friend to help you find strength in God to grow your faith. And we've already noted this in past Maple Minutes, but it's a guy named Jonathan. Jonathan was that friend that we probably would have all noticed because his friendship was so overwhelming, and he's probably the model friend in this situation, because he overcomes the difficulties of having an evil father who was trying to kill David and still becomes the type of friend that everyone should have. Over in 1 Samuel chapter 23, verses 14 through 16, it says that David stayed in the wilderness strongholds and in the hills of the desert of Ziph. Day after day, Saul searched for him, but God did not give David into his hands. While David was at Horesh in the desert of Ziph, he learned that Saul had come out to take his life. And Saul's son Jonathan went to David at Horesh and helped him find strength in God. That's the kind of friend we need. Someone who, first of all, like Samuel, will challenge us, but then you need someone like Jonathan who loves us to the point that he makes us better. He helps us find our strength in God to grow in our faith. And that's what makes David become that man after God's own heart, because Jonathan drove David into the arms of God. He grew him in faith towards God. And then the third one, the third friend we should have to help us reach our God-given potential is a friend that'll tell you the truth, especially when you don't want to hear it. And that would be the guy named Nathan the prophet. Over in 2 Samuel chapter 12, verses 5 through 7, we pick up the story. And really, to give you background, if you don't remember what happened here, David had committed adultery. He had cheated on a guy named Uriah who worked for him. He was one of his mighty men. He had slept with his wife Bathsheba and had committed sin, and she becomes pregnant, and David goes ahead and arranges, in a very deceitful process, he arranges to kill this Uriah, the Hittite, and it's just a huge cover-up, and then he marries Bathsheba, and God sends Nathan the prophet, another friend of David that David needed, to help him understand, because David was doing the almighty cover-up that we often do when we enter sin in our life. You know, Nathan was such a friend that we pick up here. It says in chapter 12 of 2 Samuel, verses 5 through 7, David burned with anger, as Nathan's telling him this story. David burned with anger against the man and said to Nathan, "As surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die. He must pay for that lamb 4 times over, because he did such a thing and had no pity." Then Nathan said to David, "You are the man. You are the man." He's pointing that finger at him. I think sometimes we forget that we need a friend like Nathan who will point that finger in our lives and help us understand the kind of person that we are, even when we don't want them to be there. We don't need critics, but we do need people to help us see truth in our own lives. I think so often it's easy to find people who just agree with us, and we like to flock together. You know the old saying, birds of a feather flock together. The other saying is, I can't soar like an eagle when I'm surrounded with turkeys. So you need to remember those two things. Find the right person. As you're writing your life story, you need to make sure that the people who surround you are important people. David had 3 that stood out in my mind. A guy named Samuel who helped bring out the best in him. A guy named Jonathan who loved him to the point where he helped him grow in his faith towards God. And a guy named Nathan who was able to tell him the truth even when David didn't want to hear it. What kind of friends do you have in your life? Who are the people? Are they just the people that are fun? Or are they the people that are growing you closer to God? One day you're going to look back in your life and you might have regrets if you're not hanging out with a wise person that the book of Proverbs tells us to hang out with. Remember, a person who hangs out with wise people becomes wise, but a companion of fools is going to suffer harm or be destroyed. So I hope you're choosing the right friends. I hope you're helping others by being the right friend in their lives.